Hey y'all, so in this video I'm going to share with you everything you're going to need to know about buying a half cow or a half beef. This is our third time to buy a half beef, and I just want to show y'all everything we've learned, because the first time we did this I was completely lost. I was asking my husband all these questions and he didn't know the answers, and he was having to go to the farmer, and we were just lost in the process. So I'm going to break it down for you here. Hopefully this will answer all of your questions if you're looking to buy your first half beef, half cow. If you have anything else that I missed, leave them below, and let's jump right in. So the first time we bought a half beef, we found the first farmer we could find that was somewhat local to our area, put in our name and ordered it. We didn't ask hardly any questions, and that's the number one thing I would recommend. So number one is going to be to find a local farmer and start asking them questions. First, if you're going to go to all the trouble to buy beef this way, you're going to want a well-raised animal. At least that's a high priority for us. We want a cow that has been on pasture, grass-fed, not grain, well taken care of, preferably rotationally grazed. That's not always possible. You're going to have to do the best with what you have in your area, but ask your farmer these questions. When you find some farmers, don't just pick the first one you find like we did, because come to find out, we picked this farmer that first time and he advertised his cows as grass-fed, and then once I started asking questions and really investigating, the cows were grain finished, which means that they're grass-fed. The steers are grass-fed for the first part of their lives, and then the last couple of months they're pumped with grain just to fatten them up so that the farmer makes more money, and just a bigger cow, it will weigh more and they can sell it for more money, which I understand. I mean, they want to get the biggest cow they can, the most money they can, but grain finished is not going to be the best of meats. If that's not an issue for you, go with whatever you have in your area. Like I said, we found the first farmer and we went with that, and it was great meat, but now having fully grass-fed beef, it's so much different. So anyways, find out from your farmer how their animals are raised, how they're rotated, they're given antibiotics often, if they're fed grain at all, or if they're finished with grain. So just ask these questions, and I'll leave a link below of some good questions that I researched to ask the local farmer that you are going to buy your meat from. And again, I'm saying local. I really do advocate buying local, because you're supporting the local farmers in your community and encouraging them to keep raising these cows and supporting them instead of supporting the grocery store where most of our meat is imported from other countries. And the quality is just nowhere near what these local farmers can provide for you. Number two, once you find your farmer, ask them all these questions and you're confident that this is the farm you want to go with to purchase your half beef, you're going to need to pay a deposit. So our farmer actually took our deposit 7 months prior to us actually getting our beef. And the reason for this is they have to put a spot in at the butcher to hold the place for those cows that will be processed. And they want to know that you're serious. They're having to pay that upfront fee, and they want to know that you're not going to back out the month the cow is ready to be butchered and say, oh, well, I don't have room in my freezer. You are going to have to put on a deposit. Now I'm going to tell you all prices throughout this video. We put down $250 for our deposit for our half beef, half cow. Could be different for different farmers, but that was our deposit. We put it in January, and we didn't get our half cow until August. So it's quite a bit of time that you have to save the rest of the money if you're having to save up. And we did have to save up for this half cow. This is an investment for us. This is something we budget into our finances, because we do prioritize this quality of beef. Number three, after the months have passed, you're going to get a call from your farmer, and they're going to have taken your cow to the butcher, and they're going to say, here's your balance that you owe me for your animal. They're either going to tell you the live weight in pounds or the hanging weight. So our farmer charges by the hanging weight. Our farmer charges $3.50 per pound of hanging weight. Now I actually found out that's actually very cheap. Another farmer in our area charges $3.99, and I think there's another one that's over $4 for grass-fed, well-raised beef. So we're very lucky to find this farmer. But anyways, we are charged by the hanging weight. If you are charged by the live weight, which means as soon as that cow comes off the pasture, they're weighing it, that's the live weight. Your price per pound will be lower, because that live weight is going to be larger, obviously, than the hanging weight. Hanging weight is usually anywhere from 60 to 65% of the live weight. Hanging weight is when they take the head off, they take out the inners, and basically all that's left is the carcass, the bones, and the meat. Now, we actually like some of those discarded parts. So we called ahead of time to our butcher, which I'll get to in a minute on calling your butcher. We actually called ahead of time and asked them to please save parts from the head, parts from the inners, the liver, the heart, the tongue, the kidneys. We asked for all of that to be saved. And we even knew ahead of time that our farmer was going to be bringing 2 steers to the butcher that day. And we called the butcher ahead and said, if the other families don't want these parts from their cow, would you be okay to save them for us? And these are parts of the cow that get thrown away anyway. We value nose to tail eating from our animals, and those parts are often underlooked. I will link, I'm actually going to link a recipe at the end of this video for one of those more rare cuts of meat, sharing a recipe with you for that. So stay tuned to the end of that for a quick recipe idea. Back to what I was saying, they're going to do a live weight or a hanging weight. We did a hanging weight, and our cow's hanging weight was 284 pounds. Now that was for a half cow. That means that our entire cow, the whole cow's hanging weight was 568 pounds. So that's once it was gutted, head chopped off, skin removed, 568 pounds. So I didn't actually ask the live weight of my cow, but doing a little bit of math, that is 60% of 937 pounds, which is right under 1,000-pound steer. And that might sound kind of low to some of you because I think most farmers aim for 1,000 to 1,200 pound steers. But remember, our cow was strictly grass fed its entire life. It was not grain finished. If they were being grain finished, they probably would have packed on that extra 100 or 2 pounds right there in the last month. So we're totally okay with a right under 1,000-pound steer because we know the quality of that is better. It might not be quite as much meat, but the quality is far better, and you will taste the difference if you've ever compared grain finished meat to fully grass-fed meat. We can at least. So that is kind of the breakdown of hanging weight and live weight. Again, we paid hanging weight, we paid $3.50 per pound for 284 pounds, which came out to $995.50. So right under $1,000. That sounds like a lot, but again, this is something we budget for, we prioritize, and we don't have to buy meat for the rest of the year. Just wait till you see all the meat we got and how stocked our freezer is. And again, this is totally a priority thing for your family. If this kind of meat is a priority to your family, you're going to make room in your budget. And it does seem like a big investment, but this is meat we don't have to buy for an entire year. So step 4 is going to be to contact your local butcher, or they might contact you, and talk to them about the cuts of meat that you want. So some butchers do this differently. They have cut sheets. I will link a video down below of some videos my husband and I watched on how to pick out our cuts of meat. There's also these handy pictures that show you what cuts you can get from what part of the cow, and if you get this specific cut, you can't get this specific cut. So you like certain cuts, certain types of steaks, there's certain steaks that you have to pick between. It's like a T-bone or a ribeye because it's the way they have to cut your meat. So you can talk more about that with your local butcher. Some butchers have beautiful cut sheets. Our butcher did not. We just had to verbally talk through it with the butcher over the phone. So that will be your next step, is deciding what cuts of meat you would like. So my advice will be to look at the cuts on the cow that I'll link below and think about what your family will actually use. Are you going to eat more steaks, more roast? Or are you just going to want a lot of hamburger meat? Because hamburger meat, everything that's not cut into a steak or a roast, they're just going to grind it into hamburger meat. So the less cuts you get, the more hamburger ground beef you will get. So that's just totally your opinion. We get as many of the cuts that we like. So we get a lot of steaks, we get all the roast that we can. We get all the organs that we can. I'll get into that in just a second. We get all the bones that we can. So everything extra that is not a usual cut, they'll turn into hamburger meat for us. And we got quite a bit of hamburger meat still, guys. So I'm not saying if you get all these cuts, you're gonna get like hardly any hamburger meat. So I'll show you at the end of this video how much ground beef we got and the different cuts we got. So you're also going to want to know how many steaks you want packaged together. So this is for like when you go to cook your steaks and you pull them out of the freezer and you thaw them. If you have a family of 4, you don't want to have just one steak packaged by itself. You're also going to decide how thick you want your steak. So I think we went with 1.25 inches. You can go as small as 1 inch, 1.5 inches, whatever inch steak you like. Also think about how you want your ground beef packaged. Do you want it packaged by the pound, 2 pounds, just depending on how much ground beef you'll use at a time. And with your roast, so there's several different roast cuts you can get from different parts of the cow. And if you're only getting a half cow, you'll only get half of the rump roast, half of the shoulder roast. So you're not gonna get all the roast, but you're gonna get the ones on your half of the cow, which is what we got. So we just opted to get every roast we could because I love being able to just put a big roast in a crock pot for an easy Sunday dinner. But you may not want that many roasts, so just tell them what you want, and the rest of it will be packaged into hamburger meat for your family. So your butcher will explain all of this, and they'll ask you the questions they need to know as far as preparing your meat. But I just wanted to give you a heads up of some of the things that you will want to think about. We watched this very helpful video down below that I'll link to help us know what to ask our butcher, because our butcher did not have a nice cut sheet for us to just go through and check off. The first farmer we used, the farmer that grain finished their cows, they did have a nice cut sheet, and I did appreciate that. I do appreciate when a butcher, the farmer has a cut sheet for you, because it is very helpful, especially if this is your first time. But I'll link some resources below that my husband and I used in choosing our cuts, our size, our pounds, and our meat cuts. So once you talk to your butcher and gotten all your cuts, you're just gonna wait for them to process your meat. And step 5 is gonna be to go pick up your meat. You will get a call from the butcher letting them know that your meat is ready, and you'll go pick up your meat, bring it home, and stock your freezer. So that's what you see us doing here. It was a fun day for my kids, husband, and I to unpackage our meat, put it in the freezer, count all the packages of how much meat we got. So I'm actually gonna have everything spread out here on a table to show you actually how much meat we got from this $995. It sounds like quite a bit. Let you know how many pounds of each ground beef we got, how many pounds of roast, how many steaks, how many pounds of steak, how many bones we got. Now we actually ask for all the bones. Most butchers are going to give you the soup bones, which are the smaller bones, and they're going to package them up very small, but we actually ask for the dog bones and all. So these are like those bones that are like a foot long that sometimes won't even fit in my Instant Pot. Some of them my husband has had to go back and cut down for me so that I can actually cook them and make bone broth. So if you don't have a very large pot, or you're using an Instant Pot like me, some of these dog bones might not fit when you're making broth. But we prioritize bone broth so much in our family. I have other videos on bone broth and how we use it and how I make it. So check those out if you're interested more in bone broth. But bone broth is such a staple in our home. I don't want any of those bones to go to waste, even those dog bones. So we literally get every part we can from this cow, and our freezer is slam full. We're actually gonna have to invest in a second freezer. This will be the, well, I guess it's technically a third freezer. And then we're gonna actually have to invest in a chest freezer this year, because we are adding hogs to our meat for this year. And then my husband will have his venison that he hunts locally in our area to add to our freezer stash. So our freezer will pretty much be stocked for the year within the next couple of months. I hope this video has broken down how to buy a half cow, a half beef, some of the common questions that I had when I was first looking into doing this, my husband and I. And if I left anything out, or if you're confused about anything, please leave the questions down below. I'll be happy to comment and elaborate on this process. So stay tuned for the recipe at the end. Okay, here's our upright freezer. We have this safety latch on here because when we had our first cow pickup, this upright freezer was being a little finicky, and if you didn't push it very well, it would pop open. And we came home one afternoon, that was back when I still worked outside of the home, and found the freezer half defrosted, and we had just gotten that half cow. This was like 3 years ago. So anyways, we have this safety lock that's been very helpful in making sure we don't lose any of this meat. You still do have to be very careful that it latches. But here's just a quick tour of everything in here. I'm gonna break it all out for you, count everything for you. Now we actually have already used 4 pounds of this ground beef in the last 2 weeks that we've had this. I've been trying to finish up the last of that venison. So this whole door is full too of, not this bacon. This bacon is not from our half cow, that's from our local farmer. We have ground beef that's overflowing my baskets. These are steaks. These are those large dog bones. This is round steak. More dog bones, more roasts. I'll have to get all this out to actually see what this is. Oh, these two right here are still venison from last year. And then all of this is brisket and roast. So we'll break all this down and show it to you. This is some cow tongue, cow heart, liver, kidneys, I think. No, this is tallow. This is fat. This is beef fat that I render down and use as a cooking oil. You can also make candles with this, lotions. Tallow is a great animal fat to have. It's actually one of my favorite animal fats. Oh, this is onions. Okay, and this is soup bones. I believe. Yeah, soup bones. That's what I was talking about, those really small bones that are a lot easier to package than these large dog bones, but we like all the bones, so I ask for it all. Let's get all of this out and I'll count everything, break down what cuts we got of each part of the cow, and break down like the price per pound. So I actually had already had this counted and tallied up when we unloaded this meat into the freezer, but I lost the paper that I wrote it down on, so we're counting it up again. So as you see me pulling everything out, I was counting and tallying up the cuts we got, the pounds we got, and here are our totals. So for ground beef, we had 88 pounds. For steaks, we had 18 steaks, which I don't know the exact pounds, but I'm rounding that to around 18 to 20 pounds. The round steak, which is the tenderized steak, we have 24 pounds. The roast, which are averaging 3 to 4 pounds, I just took an average here of 50 pounds of roast. Brisket, which is 10 pounds. We have a couple packs of ribs, which are 4 pounds. And then we have the odds and ends, the parts that many people wouldn't get. So I'm going to give you a total with these parts and a total pounds without these parts. But we have 7 pounds of liver, 2 packs of kidneys, 2 hearts, 2 cow tongues, and 2 packs of oxtail, and a shank, which is about 20 pounds. And lastly, we have bones, which I, again, averaged out to around 20 pounds. This could be more or less, but this is the average of what I think we have. So totaling all of that up with these cuts of meat, the odds and ends that most people throw away, and the bones, we have 250 pounds of meat in our freezer right now. This is an approximate, but this is pretty close to what we have. So dividing that out with the $995 that we paid for all of this, that comes out to $3.98 a pound, which from what I've seen at the grocery store, grass-fed meat, which is not even that high quality, is somewhere close to 7 pounds. So we're almost half of that price for an even higher quality of meat. So I'm pretty happy with that total. As for our family, we're getting all of this nose to tail meat, so I'm just taking that entire total and dividing it out and averaging around $3.98 a pound. So for those of you who may not eat these odds and ends, I'm going to take out the weight of those and just give you the weight in the ground beef, the steaks, the roast, like brisket and ribs. So without the bones, without the liver, without the innards, it comes out to, I don't have that exact number of pounds written down. I don't know why I missed that when I was doing my calculations, but that comes out to $5.07 a pound. So you're still coming out less per pound of meat, even if you're not keeping all those bones, all those inner parts, the liver, the heart, the kidneys. You're still coming out less than grocery store meat. You're still coming out with better quality meat. So in my opinion, for our family, this is a no-brainer. This is definitely how we will always continue to buy our meat, and hopefully eventually raise our own meat and have it processed this way. Ground beef, all steaks, roast, dog bones, and then all of the odds and ends are in the door. Alright y'all, we are going to jump into our recipe now, which is going to be for lengua tacos, and that is the Spanish name for cow tongue. So before I gross you out and turn you off, this is an odd cut of meat. This is a cut most people wouldn't get. But we were actually given this cut by my mom, her beef pickup last year. I didn't ask for it, but they gave it to her. So I tried it out, and we loved this recipe. I loved this cut of meat, and I asked for it in our own pickup just this past month. So lengua tacos is what I call it, so I'm actually calling it cow tongue tacos to my family. So to prepare the meat, I defrost it, thaw it, then soak it in a mixture of vinegar and water in my sink for about 10 minutes. I'm going to rub some salt across that meat in the crevices all over the meat cut, and just really clean it up good, get any gamey, odd flavors off of that meat, and let it soak here for about 10 minutes. While that's soaking, I'm going to get my other seasonings ready to go into the Instant Pot. We are cooking this in the Instant Pot, so I'm going to add a couple cloves of garlic, onion, salt, pepper, and a few cloves. And we're just going to toss all that in the Instant Pot, cover it well, just right above the cow tongue with water, and cook it on the pressure cook function for 40 minutes. So while the tongue is cooking, I'm preparing my tortillas. Now I make homemade sourdough tortillas. You can buy any tortilla that you like pre-made, but I have my recipe for sourdough tortillas in a previous video that I'll link below if you are interested in seeing how I make our sourdough tortillas. So I worked on that while the cow tongue was cooking in the Instant Pot. And then here comes the majority of the work here. So to prepare the meat, you're going to want to take some time in preparing this. I spent a good 25-30 minutes just chopping, peeling, preparing this meat because it is a delicious cut of meat, but like most odd parts of meat, they have to be prepared well for them to be delicious and for people to want to actually eat them. So you're going to want to start by getting this outer layer off. All these taste buds, all this really yucky looking piece. This is really a turn off if you see someone cooking this, but then when you actually taste it, it is amazing. I watched a lady cook this when I learned how to make this recipe. I'll link it below for you guys if you want to watch her video on it, and I was just totally disgusted, honestly, to watch her cook it. But I was like, I've got to give this a try. We have this in our freezer, and the creaminess and the delicacy that this cut is, there's so many people that are sleeping on this cut of meat. So you just want to peel off that outer white layer. Most of it's going to peel off pretty easily. You may have to get your knife in a few spots, kind of on the sides and the back where it was actually attached in the animal. That top layer is going to peel off pretty easily, and that's the gist of what you want to get off. You're going to want to trim a little bit more of that off as you're actually cutting your meat. Once you get the top layer off, you're going to want to cut off that back piece where it was attached in the mouth of the animal. If you see a few extra taste buds, get those off. My husband accidentally saw a couple in our last recipe I made, and he ate it, but it kind of just like grossed him out. It's just more the thought of this cut of meat, because it's a really delicious cut of meat if you can get past the thought of cow tongue. That's why we call them lengua. Make sure you get any odd pieces that are all odd pieces hanging on. Again, if you see any little taste buds, get that layer off, and then start chopping this in very, very thin slices. If you were to eat Mexican street tacos, they would have very thin slices just like this. Now we are actually going to cut ours even further into a very finely chopped meat because that's how I can get my family to eat it. And I want to remind you, don't get rid of that broth. The Instant Pot is so delicious. It is a delicious batch of broth, so don't discard that delicious broth. Alright, once we get it cut up into very small pieces, I'm going to put it in a skillet, add a little bit of that broth back so I don't dry out the meat, and just make sure I get it all chopped up really good. I go back with my kitchen scissors and make sure it's very finely chopped, and just kind of warm it, sort of somewhat toast it. You're not actually cooking it because you don't want a crispy meat, but you do want a very soft and moist meat. So I'm adding back some broth, and this also keeps it warm while I'm getting the rest of the meal prepared. So to assemble the tacos, we're just going to add the meat to our tortillas, and then you can top it with whatever tacos toppings you prefer. We are just using a bit of mashed avocado. I had some avocado mashed with garlic, salt, and pepper. I could have made a true guacamole, but I didn't go that far on this night. Some sour cream that we bought. I didn't even make it here. And some homemade salsa. This is the homemade salsa that I canned this summer with you guys. I'll link that video below if you want to see our homemade salsa recipe. And that is it. If you're able to get your hands on some cow tongue, try this recipe. There's other recipes for lengua tacos. This is one I found and that we actually love. You can't taste that it's cow tongue. And let me know if you try this one. It's so good.